All right, welcome to this webinar with EducationUSA Luxembourg and Whitworth University. My name is Will Bacher. I'm your Education USA advisor for Luxembourg. I live here in Luxembourg. In fact, I have upcoming office hours where I'm available virtually. I'm looking forward to the day when I can have in-person office hours again, but until that time, I would encourage you to get in contact with me. You can contact me by email, and that way we can make an appointment to speak, by voice using something like Zoom or Google Meets at a time that's mutually convenient. I also have upcoming virtual office hours where you can just use the link that I'm about to put in the chat in order to join. That's next Tuesday and the following Wednesday. Um, I, we can also exchange information by email. We don't necessarily have to find the time that works, especially if you have just a brief question, something you found on a website that doesn't necessarily make sense. I'm your resource here in Luxembourg. And that means you can talk to me just about any time. But tonight you have a special opportunity to speak with Marie Whalen of Whitworth University. Marie is an admissions director and specializes in international students. She is also originally from Luxembourg. So I'm very glad to have her with us as a special guest for this call this evening. And Marie, if you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Will. As Will mentioned, I am a native of Luxembourg. A lot of my family is still in Luxembourg, so I take special pleasure in joining you today and just wish I could be there in person with you in Luxembourg. I would also like to thank my colleague Will Bacher for hosting me, and just am grateful for all the work that Education USA does to support both US universities and students wishing to attend our universities. So before we get into the depths of financial aid, I thought you might want to know just a little bit about my university. There are approximately 4,000 institutions of higher education in the US, so I don't necessarily expect that you would have heard of Whitworth. Usually students just hear of the same 10 or 20 universities. And my university is a 131-year-old Christian-affiliated liberal arts and sciences university. We are located in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, which I, maybe in my slightly biased view, think it is the best state in the US because it's beautiful. It reminds me a little bit of Luxembourg with its hills and valleys and rivers and lakes and farms. It's just a lovely place. And it's also a headquarter of some of the world's largest companies, which our international students take advantage of, finding internships and jobs post-graduation. So Whitworth is located in Washington State, as I mentioned, and it is specifically located in Spokane, Washington, which is the second largest city in Washington State. It is about 270,000 residents in the city. It's a lovely city. It's got a river running through it and waterfalls, and it's just a very comfortable, family-friendly town, but with lots of things to do. Whitworth itself, as a liberal arts and sciences university, offers a wide variety of different subjects for undergrads, over 60 majors and 100 programs, plus graduate programs. So here you can see just a few of those programs. And we are located on a very traditional college campus. You'll see lots of brick buildings, old and new, but our facilities inside are state of the art. So whether you're wanting to study engineering or biochemistry or music or education or anything in between, you will be doing so in smart classrooms and with state of the art equipment. Okay, so let's get to the main purpose of this webinar, which is to help you as an international student understand the financial considerations if you're looking at U.S. universities. With the basics, those are things that you really need to think about before you apply anywhere. And I really want to stress that because I often encounter students who they'll submit their application documents, etc. And then they'll ask a question that shows that, you know, they would not financially be able to attend Whitworth, or we don't have the program that they are looking for. So it's really, really important to do your homework and do your research. So these basics include, first and foremost, what can you afford? And this is a discussion, if you are a student who's financially dependent on your family, you need to discuss that with your family. And you need to think about the fact that it's not just what is the cost of the institution for the first year, but realizing that it is a 4-year investment. And costs at U.S. universities typically go up 2 or 3% per year. So you have to think about that and whether it's sustainable for 4 years so you can get your degree. You also need to be realistic about your academic and financial profile. And that means you need to think about colleges and or universities where you can realistically gain admission based on your grades, any test scores that are required, your overall application. Every other student wants to apply to the top 5 universities in the U.S. Well, so do 100,000 other students for the maybe 1,200 positions that are open. And, you need to think about whether, you have the grades and what they are looking for. You can find that information on websites by looking at like class of 2020 academic profile. So do look at that and look at whether these universities that you're applying to, look at what their costs are. And if you cannot afford to pay the full cost, look at whether they offer aid and what kind of aid is available and what their policies are. And we'll talk about the importance of financial aid policies soon. What are the university's admissions policies and how they relate to financial aid? This should all be available on institutions' websites. And what does an average aid package look like? Those are all things to consider. Those are the basics. Let's talk about cost of attendance. This is a really important term for you to know. Often students, they'll look at a website and they'll be like, oh, the tuition and fees are, $40,000. Okay, I can afford that maybe, or maybe I can afford $30,000. But cost of attendance means everything. It means like the tuition, the fees, what room and boards would be, estimated costs of books, cost of living if you're living off campus, and just, miscellaneous funds that you would need for living in a particular place. So cost of attendance is a combination of fixed costs or billable costs. These are costs that are billed to you by the university, which is typically tuition fees, room and board, and mandatory insurance for international students. And the others are discretionary or estimated costs. That means the university isn't going to bill you for them. We can't, you can't know the exact amount that it would cost for you to live off campus in an apartment, for example, or, how much money you would spend on clothing or medicine or, going out to eat with your friends. But these are all things that you should consider and work out a budget for. A lot of websites have a total estimated cost of attendance, But if they do not, you can email your admissions counselor from the, who you're working with and say, what is the full estimated cost of attendance? It's important to know, again, that, and I will be stressing this, that financial aid policies differ widely from college to college, and only a very, very small number of colleges and universities offer full scholarships or offer to meet the amount that you think you need to attend. I, like other international admissions counselors, we so often encounter students who will email us or come up to us at college fairs and say, hey, so I want a full scholarship. And, there's this misconception that this is common. It really is not. And there are only, a very limited number of universities that offer those. And even then, that doesn't mean you would get one. So then the other two terms that are important to understand as part of the cost of attendance is the sticker price versus the net cost. The sticker price is the cost that's listed on the website or that you get from your admissions counselor. This is what, tuition fees, room and board costs. The net price is the price you would actually pay as a student. Maybe if, the net price, say it's $61,000 per year for those fixed or billable costs. If it's a university, like a lot of, state universities, some do not offer any aid at all. So that's what you would be paying then, $61,000. But for colleges or universities like mine that offer scholarship and need aid opportunities, maybe you've been offered $40,000. So in financial aid, so then your net cost would be $21,000 per year. So don't be put off by sticker prices. If you see them on a website, a sticker price can be very high, but for an institution that offers aid, you could end up paying far less. But you do have to also make sure that these scholarship and aid opportunities are not only for U.S. citizens and permanent residents. You have to make sure that they include international students, where sometimes the aid policies can be very different. Okay, so let's talk about admissions policies. It is sometimes a surprise to students to find out that your financial status can affect whether you will be admitted or not to that specific institution. Some colleges and universities require that you submit, financial documents or aid applications along with your admissions application. And then, they may deny you if you require more than a specific amount of aid, or they need more students who are full pay students. So in a situation like that, you can have, an outstanding application. You can be highly qualified academically to attend that university, but you could still be denied based on your financial situation. So how would you know if you're applying to a college or university whether that is the case? You can find out by understanding the terms that I'm about to discuss. One is needs blind. If a university or college states that their admission is needs blind, as it is for Whitworth University, then you would be admitted strictly on the basis of your application and academic and other qualifications that are not related to your financial circumstances. Colleges or universities that are need aware If they say they are need aware, that means they will be looking at your financial capability and considering that in your admission. And for some that will be because they do offer aid that meets 100% of financial need. And that's another term to look at. If an institution says they will meet 100% of demonstrated financial need, then they will. But it's also important to understand that term demonstrated. That means demonstrated by the financial aid application and financial documents you submit, not necessarily by what you or your family think you can pay. Sometimes there can be a significant gap between that, between the one and the other. It's also important to point out that just because a college or university is needs blind in their admissions policies, which a lot of universities are, that does not necessarily mean that they will meet 100% of demonstrated financial needs. So there could be a gap. Maybe they'll admit you, and maybe you will get that $40,000 in financial aid, but maybe what you can pay, what your family believes they can pay, is like $5,000 or $7,000 less. So then what is being offered. So then you have to figure out, is this university affordable? Are there, loans that I can get from my country, or some, on-campus job or something to close that gap so I can attend that college or university. The U.S. also has a variety of different types of awards and aid. The most important thing to know is that all aid that you receive is financial aid. Students are often confused by that. They'll email me, for example, and say, yeah, I got this scholarship, but when am I going to get my financial aid? What they really mean is, when am I going to find out about my need-based financial aid? Because the fact is, any aid you receive, no matter what it is, whether it's a talent or merit or athletic scholarship or need-based grant or some other special thing, the fact is it is all aid that reduces your cost of attendance. So merit-based aid is often academic aid, and it can be talent-based aid, or aid, for example, maybe you would get a scholarship because you have proven yourself to, have engaged in a lot of community service. Maybe you get a community service scholarship or a leadership scholarship for things that you have done. So those are different types of scholarships. Sometimes you can get departmental scholarships, especially after you have been at your institution for a year. Whitworth has these. These are typically awarded to one or two outstanding students in a department. Sometimes, a university or college may have a major or area-specific scholarship. But again, there's also need-based aid. Some universities have only one kind of aid versus another, and some have a wide variety of different aids. It's important to understand also that institutional need-based grants are not loans. This is purely gift aid that you will not need to repay. Other types of aids are often important in closing financial gaps for students if their overall financial aid packet is not enough. So one important one is on-campus jobs. Students who obtain an F1 visa, which is the type you would need to be a degree-seeking student at Whitworth, and at any institution in the US, one of the benefits is that students can work up to 20 hours per week on their specific college or university campus during the academic year, and up to 40 hours a week or full-time during the summer. Some colleges or universities have specific, restrictions on what a student can apply to on campus, such as it must be related to their major. But a lot of colleges and universities like Whitworth do not. So you can basically apply for anything that you might be qualified for. And the earnings you get will depend on the university and often the state that you are in. Some states have low minimum wage rates in their state. It might be only like $7.50 per hour, and others have a really high minimum wage rate that's almost double that. So that's another consideration in looking at locations for U.S. study. Off-campus internships, these are not always paid. Sometimes students get unpaid internships, but if you can get a paid internship, especially for the summer working full-time, you can earn some decent money. Students often ask about loans, and the fact is there are very few U.S. universities that offer loans to international students for the same reason that U.S. lending institutions do not offer aid to international students without a U.S. citizen co-signer, because there's no way to really get those funds back once the students completed their studies and left the country if they don't want to pay it back. But you can often get loans in your country, so that's another option. So in terms of institutional financial aid requirements, every U.S. college or university system, if you're talking about large public university systems, they have their own financial aid requirements and forms. And again, I want to remind you that there are university systems that offer zero aid to international students. And so I'm not going to call out any individual, university system. You'll have to do your research on that. And, the aid applications themselves can vary. The College Board offers a couple of options. One is the International Student Financial Aid Application, or the ISFAA, which is a relatively simple, short form. And a lot of colleges do accept that. And then, there are also a lot of colleges, especially selective colleges, that require the College Board CSS profile. Whitworth is one of those institutions. It is a much lengthier and more complicated form. And it's one I have filled out for one of my own students for various colleges. So I can feel your pain if you have to submit one of those. But the benefits of the CSS profile is that it really does give us as institution representatives a lot of good detailed information that enables us to give you the best possible financial aid within, what we are able to afford. It also allows you to, the application itself, to enter information in your local currency. So you're not having to go and try to, convert the currency from euros to US dollars, for example. But then other institutions have their own individual aid policies and applications. So, just realize you might end up filling out 3, 4, 5 or more different financial aid applications. And some institutions also require applications for scholarships and separate applications for each scholarship. So if you're getting the sense that this can also all be very time consuming, the reality is it can, but it can also result in a lot of financial aid that will enable you to study at a specific university. So it is well worth your time to, to complete these applications. Also very, very important to know is that at A lot of institutions' deadlines for scholarships and need-based aid are firm. So, if they say on their website or, application that this must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. on May 12th, and you submitted at 12:01 a.m. on May 13th, you could be out of luck and not qualify for any aid. So what that means is don't start trying to figure out what you need, the last day or two before things are due. Create a spreadsheet. This is what I always tell students: use an Excel spreadsheet or something similar. For each institution, put down, application deadlines, scholarship deadline for whatever scholarships you're applying for, CSS profile deadline. Whatever deadlines there are, or if they're for specific programs, you need to list them, because if you're applying to more than a couple of institutions, you are not going to be able to remember them easily. Okay, and also equally important, if you have questions about aid, about the process, or you're not sure about the deadlines, and this happens a lot with international students. It's like, well, is this deadline, in, Pacific Daylight Time, or is it, in Central European Time or Indian Standard Time? So those are good questions to ask. Right now, I want to just give you an example from my university, because I know my university's scholarship and aid system the best. Because you may be wondering, what would this look like at a specific university if I was applying for scholarship and aid? So Whitworth is very committed to supporting international students. And we offer, for first-year undergraduate students, we offer automatic academic scholarships based on your converted grade point average and or test scores. And we consider a variety of different test scores. We are SAT and ACT optional. So, you could submit, we would consider A levels or IB, or even like TOEFL or Cambridge IELTS with scholarships, because in some areas of the world, that is all that students can access, and we do not want to deny access to students. So, if we see that you qualify, you'll just be awarded automatically. That is one less scholarship application you have to fill out. And I believe that Will can point you on the chat box to the link on our website to look at those scholarships. We also have a wide variety of talent scholarships that are available, and these you do need to apply for. There are separate applications for them, and for obvious reasons. If you're going to apply for an art scholarship, the art department needs to see your portfolio, or if it's a music scholarship, they need to get a recording or a YouTube performance or something. But the good news is for some of our talent scholarships, you don't necessarily have to major in that area, though there might be some things you do need to do. For a music scholarship, you have to join a couple of, join the choir or join a jazz ensemble or whatever it is. About 100 or 1,000 up to 10,000 or more. So on top of your academic scholarships. So it's well worth applying for these if you have specific talents that relate to scholarships. Whitworth is one university that does offer a limited number of full tuition scholarships to students admitted with honors based on the strength of their academic profile. This year we offered 9 because of COVID to help more students, but typically in a year we offer 6. And those are open to domestic and international students. couple of years now that we've offered this, we've had international students, be awarded these based on the strength of their participation in our honors scholarship competitions, including from Albania, Pakistan, South Africa, just widely disparate countries that our international students are coming from. Whitworth also strongly supports the Education USA network and the work it does to provide expert guidance to international students seeking to study in the U.S. Therefore, if you are registered with an Education USA or Fulbright office, you enroll at Whitworth, we'll give you a $1,000 per year scholarship. That's an extra $4,000 just for working with EducationUSA. So if you're not currently working with Will Backer and you're thinking about Whitworth, even if you're not thinking about Whitworth, please do go work with him. He can really help guide you. And this past year, we also started offering a $3,000 partial housing grant to help students further because so many families have been impacted by COVID. Our need-based aid varies depending on a student's financial situation as determined by the CSS profile. So some of our students don't qualify for need-based aid because of, a very high level of earnings. Others do. And some qualify for quite a lot of financial aid. So this is what aid at our institution looks like. And, this is just one example. Students also often wonder, how can I, once I am at my college or university, how can I earn additional funding? Because, 4 years is a long time and it is a lot of money. And so there are opportunities on a lot of college and university campuses. I mentioned on-campus jobs. At Whitworth, what that looks like is, we are in one of the states that, we have the second highest minimum wage rate in the United States in Washington. So our students earn between $13.69 and $14 per hour, which is a lot more than in a lot of locations. We have student, leadership opportunities that come with extra benefits. For example, if you are a resident assistant at Whitworth, you get free housing and meals, which is worth over $12,000 right there. You don't have to pay. Or if your house is a model unique to Whitworth, we have cultural diversity advocates or CDAs that are there specifically to assist international students and other students from underrepresented groups. And that comes with a free meal plan, again, about worth, over $5,000. Our students do internships. Whitworth believes in hands-on learning experiences. So internships, practicums, these are either required or strongly recommended for all majors. And the overwhelming majority of our students manage to secure paid internships. And really, I can only think of one student in the past several years that was offered an unpaid internship and they didn't take it because they got a paid internship. So, those are opportunities. And we also offer some additional scholarship opportunities. And this is something to check with whatever colleges and universities interest you. Hey, your aid will not necessarily increase, but you have these other kinds of opportunities for earning funds and cutting costs. Okay, so another important thing is to really consider things you should and should not be doing. Again, do ask questions. If you're not certain that you're filling out a form correctly for a scholarship or aid, or you're not certain about a deadline, or even just you're at the starting process and you're not sure what aid is offered. And, you know, sometimes university websites really are difficult to navigate. So if you can't figure it out, email your admissions counselor or the general admissions email address at the university, or call them. And really important thing is, okay, let's say you've applied to the colleges and universities, you've gotten some admissions, and now you've gotten your full financial award letters. Well, please read those letters very, very carefully to make sure you understand the terms of the award. Every award that you receive from every university has terms. That means requirements. So you may need to typically maintain a certain grade point average in order to keep that award. So, you know, maybe that grade point average is a 2.0 out of 4, or maybe for certain, let's say you've gotten several different scholarships, and one scholarship may require that you maintain a GPA of 3.5 or 3.0. So, you know, students often, they look at their award and they may be excited. Oh, I got all this money. Read the fine print carefully. And not only because, you know, of these terms, but you cannot assume that all of the aid is renewable, because sometimes it isn't. There are universities that engage in a practice that is called front loading. And what that means is they will offer really generous aid packets to domestic and international students for the first year. And again, they're counting on students looking at that and just being thrilled with their aid packets, and then, oh, I'm going to deposit and go here. But they aren't necessarily reading the fine print. And if they do, they may find out that portions of the award are not renewable, that, you know, this one scholarship of 7,000 and their packet of 35,000 is not renewable after the first year. So that means you're thinking your cost of attendance, maybe it's going to be 20,000. Well, it's actually going to be 27,000 after the first year. So don't get overly excited by any financial aid award until you have read this. You know, at my institution, except for the visits and virtual visit scholarships, which we are very clear about is a one-time scholarship, all other aid is renewable. We do not believe in front loading. It's really unfair to practice in terms of how it can affect students. But there are institutions that do this. And again, I'm not calling anybody out. You have to do your research and read those awards carefully. Okay. And, you know, here I've written, do record all application deadlines. Again, start your Excel sheet or whatever, you know, sheet that, whatever, you know, you use to keep track of things so that you don't miss any important deadlines. Discuss the budget with your family, and most of all, do not rush your aid applications. Some of them could take you days or more to fill out because you may be required to, you know, you may need bank statements, you may need, you know, employment letters with financial data on it. You may need your parents' help. Or like for something like the CSS profile where there's a lot of family financial data, maybe your parents aren't thrilled about having you see what their financial situation is, so they may want to fill it out for you. But give yourself a lot of time for filling out scholarship applications and aid applications, so that they are accurate. I often have students who will email me saying, I submitted the CSS profile and just realized I made a big mistake. How can I resubmit it? Well, you can't resubmit it, but you can provide documentation and information showing what was incorrect and give it to the office. But that's kind of a pain for my colleagues in the financial aid office. So it's better to just do it right the first time. Okay, so you too can have a successful process in gaining admission to a good fit university. And by good fit, I mean one that is good for you academically, financially, hopefully also socially, and in every other way. And that begins again with understanding where you are likely to be admitted, and to have costs that you can afford, either with or without aid, and knowing the financial aid policies, reading instructions carefully, and communicating with your family and financial aid officers and admissions officers. Yeah. Okay, well, that is the end of my presentation. I wanted to leave a good chunk of time for questions. So if you have questions, I'm checking here.
Marie, I see one in the chat, which is to ask about sports scholarships, which I know is a big and complicated topic, but if you could just address.
Right. Yeah, I kind of just flew over athletic scholarships, but we have time to discuss that for a few minutes. So the athletic scholarship situation is a complicated one. For one thing, in the U.S., the NCAA has 3 divisions, divisions 1, 2, and 3. And divisions 1 and 2 can offer athletic scholarships, but not division 3. Whitworth University is a division 3 university, so we do not offer athletic scholarships. But as you can see, we offer a lot of other types of aids, and we have smart student athletes, so they typically qualify for good scholarships and aid. But even with division 1 and 2, it is a complicated picture. Just first of all, there's just the challenge of becoming an athlete in division 1 especially, but even division 2. It's extremely difficult. There are a lot of great student athletes out there, and it's very hard to get on a team, especially one that's like a popular team in, highly ranked nationally in the US. But let's say, for example, that we have 2 students here who are student athletes, and they both apply to, X university and were recruited, and they're now on, one is on their, national championship basketball team. And they have gotten a full scholarship. Everything's taken care of. So they are pretty happy. The other student is on a track team or a golf team that really isn't, a big sport at their university, at X university. And so they are in a situation where they're either not offered a scholarship or maybe just a partial scholarship that wouldn't necessarily be more than if they had been offered some other type of aid. The fact is, universities don't have like limitless full athletic scholarships. And the ones they do, they go to the most desirable athletes in the biggest money-making sports. I'm not sure if it was politically correct to phrase it that way, but that is the reality. And so, for example, I have a family member who was a Division I athlete in cross country and track at a university. And, they didn't, she was a full member of the team, but did not get any kind of athletic scholarship because, that team just wasn't deemed valuable enough at the university to give one of those scholarships. And for Division II as well, some fewer students maybe get full scholarship, athletic scholarships, but it's certainly not going to be for every sport. So if you're thinking, about you want an athletic scholarship and you're thinking you're good enough to get into a Division I or II school, you really have to do your research. And, maybe you will be recruited, but you may not necessarily be recruited by a university that's going to offer you an athletic scholarship or a full scholarship. Okay.
Thanks, Maria. I just want to add a little extra question to that. If you are a talented athlete, if you mention that or provide evidence of that, or like a recommendation from a coach or a ranking to a school like Whitworth that doesn't have athletic scholarships, can that help you get a merit-based scholarship?
No, that would be violating rules. I'm not saying that it may not happen, but it shouldn't happen. A merit-based scholarship shouldn't be used as a covert athletic scholarship. So if a student applies to Whitworth and they are awarded an academic scholarship, it will be because they qualified academically. I, as the admissions counselor, I love sports, but really, I don't care how brilliant you may be as, a soccer player. If your GPA doesn't meet our scholarship qualifications, I am not awarding you one. So yeah, because that would really be violating NCAA rules, and if it was discovered, there would be serious consequences for that. So it's something that should not happen at any college or university. Good question, though. Also, I don't know who put this in there, but the question, golf is nothing important. Sorry, didn't mean to pick on golf. We actually have international students on our golf team, and it's a lovely sport. It was just trying to use an example. There's no negative judgment on golf. So somebody asked about medical insurance. Is it another cost on top of tuition? It is typically billed separately, whether you're an international student or a domestic student, but you would be, when you receive, your list of costs or find them on the website, you should be able to get a breakdown of those costs. And, costs can vary greatly. It's typically is maybe around, it can gravitate between like 1,000 and up. I know I had one family member who attended a very expensive Ivy League university, and it was like, oh, $4,000 for this. Okay. So, it can vary, but you should have that information upfront from universities. So that's a good question. Yeah. One thing I will say is, year 11 is a good time to start putting your college list together and to do this kind of research. It's a whole lot easier than waiting until the September of your senior year and trying then to figure out, among the 4,000 institutions, where should I apply? And then having to do the applications themselves, it can easily become like a full-time job on top of your schoolwork. So the earlier you can start, or at least the summer, just before you enter your senior year of high school, take the time to do it correctly. Okay.
Yeah, I did get a DM with one question, and I know you mentioned that Whitworth is SAT and ACT optional, and the question asks, are the SATs needed for every school in America as a European student? So if you could maybe tell us a little bit about that test optional policy.
Yes, that's a great question to ask. When some colleges and universities are test optional for their domestic US students, but not for international students. And so that's one of those situations that, like financial aid policies, vary from institution to institution. And so you would need to research each individual institution. So like for Whitworth, the way that it works is we are I call us test flexible. That means we are test optional for the SAT and ACT, whether you're an international student or a US student. We have many students in both categories who apply and are admitted without those tests. For us, typically, for an international student who is from a country that we deem non-English speaking, or English isn't the primary language, all we need is some kind of proof that you meet our English requirements. So, some students do submit an SAT or ACT, and if you've taken it, fine, we'll consider that. But like if you are doing Cambridge A-levels, we would look at your O-level exam English grade. It has to be English as a first language, not second. Or if you're doing the IB curriculum, we will take, English language and or literature SL level as sufficient proof. Or students can submit the TOEFL, the Cambridge IELTS, or as of this past year, the Duolingo English test, which is, completely online. It's also inexpensive. So we really want to give students, I am a firm believer in access for students, and especially the international students that we work with. So we want to give a variety of ways to create access for our students. So any of those are fine to apply to Whitworth. So these are really good questions. We've got like 3 minutes left according to my clock here. So if there is one other question, perhaps, I'm happy to answer it. And again, if you think of questions after this webinar, or, a week or two or a month or two afterwards, feel free to email me directly at mwhalen@whitworth.edu. I'm always happy to answer questions, even if it's just some US admissions questions. Feel free to reach out to either Will or myself. I'm often counseling students on just generals of aspects of applying to a US college or university, because it's not like some systems where there's one standard system for applying to US colleges and universities. It's really complex, and don't expect students to know. So never be afraid of asking what you might think are too basic of a question. It's much better to ask and know what you're doing and have a correct answer. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, I would just like to thank those of you who took the time to join today. I hope that the webinar was informative. And again, I would like to thank Will Bacher for hosting me. And please do use Will and the resources of Education USA. He can certainly, be a great guide if you're trying to figure out what institutions might be a good option for you. And I hope that you all have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, Marie. That was a great presentation, really good overview, and I appreciate you having that specific Luxembourg connection and helping so many people get well informed. And I know you've already helped a few students from Luxembourg, so thank you for your time with that individual one-on-one. And I too would encourage you to reach out to Marie if you have any questions. She's a great resource, and as she said, can speak generally as well as to the specifics for Whitworth University.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Thank you, all of you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Good night, all. Thanks for joining us.